Hi, PerspectiveWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Friday, July 31st. A lot to talk about this morning. We now have a hurricane. Isaias became a hurricane in the overnight hours. Now has maximum sustained winds at 80 miles per hour, moving along to the northwest at 17 miles per hour. A Category 1 hurricane. It has a chance to become a Category 2 hurricane over the next 12 to 24 hours or so. It has generally bypassed the island of Hispaniola. It's certainly to the north of there. There's still some impact. We'll see in the satellite imagery in a moment that there's still some impact on the system. Once it gets completely away from Hispaniola, it could intensify a bit more into Hurricane 2 status. It looks like it's going to pound away at the Bahama Islands over the next 24 hours or so. Probably reach a position maybe 50 miles off the east coast of Florida, then start turning to the north and ride up along the eastern seaboard, impacting the Carolinas, perhaps as a hurricane, maybe riding up along the mid-Atlantic and New England coastlines during the early to middle part of next week. The timing of that is still certainly a little bit unclear, but we do have to deal with a hurricane now. Isaias, again, has become the second hurricane of the 2020 tropical season. First of all, here's the latest official map from NOAA's National Hurricane Center. We have a lot to talk about this morning. This is the current location of Hurricane Isaias. This is the island of Hispaniola. And yesterday we talked about oftentimes a tropical cyclone will tend to kind of reposition itself when it has an encounter with that particular island. This island here with Haiti on the left, Dominican Republic on the right, has some mountainous terrain. In fact, has some mountain peaks over 10,000 feet, about 10,500 feet high, that oftentimes can disrupt the overall circulation pattern surrounding a tropical cyclone. Oftentimes they'll weaken, at best maybe hold their intensity level passing near that island, and many times again there's a repositioning where the center tends to kind of dance around the island and end up maybe on the northern side, and that is in fact what happened over the past 12 to 24 hours or so. Low pressure areas tend to go in areas of least resistance. They try to avoid mountainous terrain and land masses when possible here, and indeed didn't know if the center would emerge on the south side or the north side, and it kind of danced around the island and re-emerge on the north side. That increases the chance for significant impact on places like the Bahamas and even up along the eastern seaboard. Of course, if it repositioned on the south side, that would have to deal with Cuba as a landmass and perhaps end up in the Gulf of Mexico. But again, we're now positioned north and west of Hispaniola, pulling away, impacting greatly over the next 24 hours or so the Bahama Islands. General path appears to be just off the east coast of Florida, maybe reaching Hurricane 2 status, and then maybe riding up the eastern seaboard much like this. Again, still some details have to be ironed out. You have to be on hurricane watch all the way up to the Carolinas. The water temperatures are quite warm here. We'll take a look at that in a moment here. Again, allowing for the possibility of this hurricane to go from Category 1, which it is now, to Category 2 status. There also will be some increasing wind shear, so that could limit even further intensifications, but we'll monitor that over the next couple of days. First, another thing I want to point out is we have a couple other waves here in the central and eastern Atlantic. It looks like it's a very active time period, and we may have to deal with another impact on the U.S. East Coast over the next week to 10 days or so. We are now almost into the month of August. Typically, the tropical season in the Atlantic Basin ramps up throughout the month of August, reaches a peak generally about the middle part of September, and then slowly ramps down later September and through the month of October. Again, it looks like a very active season, and we're not even halfway there yet. We talked about the reasons for a very active season in our tropical outlook issued in the spring. one of the main reasons La Nina conditions, colder than normal, have formed in the equatorial part of the Pacific. Well, here's a look at the sea surface temperature pattern in the southwestern Atlantic, and certainly a major area of concern, really, because the water temperatures are quite warm, warmer than normal in many areas, even warmer than 30 degrees Celsius. Certainly sufficient to support hurricane, a category 1, 2, or even higher than that. Doesn't mean it'll get up that high. This is just one of the factors. You have environmental conditions, atmospheric conditions as well to deal with, but the sea surface temperatures are quite warm. Look at the scale right here. Anything darker gray here is 30 degrees Celsius or higher, and that is what we're seeing in this particular region right here. The hurricane right now positioned right in this region right here, and it looks like it will ride right up and over some of this very, very warm water sitting over the southwestern part of the Atlantic. So if anything, this argues for additional intensification, and again, it is on the table that this category 1 hurricane becomes a category 2 right in this area right here over the next 24 to 36 hours or so. Well, before we get to the latest satellite imagery loop of Hurricane Isaias, let's take a look at some of the predictions here by numerous computer forecast models. This from a University of Albany website. Again, Hurricane Isaias now north and west of Hispaniola, and the basic premise here, the basic idea here from these computer forecast models is it rides up over the Bahama Islands, just off the east coast of Florida, and then perhaps goes all the way up along the east coast of the United States. One outlier here has it going a little bit inland. This is a Canadian forecast model, certainly still on the table, but in general the idea is it could be a hurricane maybe 50 miles or so off the east coast of Florida during the upcoming weekend, and could maintain hurricane status as it approaches the Carolinas later in the weekend or the early part of next week. And heavy rain is a threat right along the coast, even all the way up to New England during the early part of next week. Again, this is a compilation of models for the track over the next several days by Hurricane Isaias. Well, here's the latest satellite imagery loop from tropicaltidbits.com, and it is using the GO-16 satellite, a natural color band here, and for the daytime and the nighttime was an IR band here, so we're shifting from the night to the day. Again, there is some influence still for this hurricane from the island of Hispaniola. Once it gets a little bit farther to the north and west, it'll be pretty much bypassing any kind of influence from that island, and that, in addition to the very, very warm sea surface temperatures, could allow for additional intensification. Again, could go from category 1, which it is right now, to category 2 over the next 12 to 24 hours or so. Moving to the northwest, 17 miles an hour. It'll just rake the Bahama Islands over the next 12 to 24 hours or so, moving over those warm waters of the southwestern Atlantic. Again, some convective activity still showing up in the overall circulation pattern of this storm, but that'll pull away from the island and more or less out over relatively open waters. Of course, you have the Bahama Islands, but more open, certainly less mountainous terrain than what it's dealing with on its southeast flank at the current time. Well, let's go back to a kind of a familiar tool we've used over the past few days from the University of Wisconsin. Total precipitable water, basically showing where the areas of high moisture content currently exist. Very high moisture content appears on these particular maps in the color of orange and red and yellow, and here is all that moisture with Hurricane Isaias. And one of the points I want to make here, even if the center goes 50 miles off the east coast of Florida, with such a large area of moisture, you can expect heavy rainfall along the coast, certainly maybe 3, 4, 5 inches of rain, places like Melbourne, Cape Canaveral, Titusville. Certainly don't just focus in on the track of the circulation center. Very large area of moisture will cause certainly some heavy rainfall and some strong winds many, many miles away from the center. We could see a large blob of high moisture associated with this, and that'll ride up to the coastal areas of Florida and then along the U.S. East Coast. Notice also a couple other impressive areas of moisture out over the tropical Atlantic. That's another wave and yet another wave just off the west coast of Africa. And again, this is now ramping up, climatologically speaking, to the most active time of the year. Looks like we certainly will be active even once the Isaias gets out of our hair here. We'll have to deal with additional waves now over the tropical Atlantic. Perhaps as early as middle or later part of next week, we'll have to focus on another threat for the U.S. East Coast. Well, let's now focus in on last night's 06Z operational run of the GFS model. And let me point out right up front here that in terms of the timing of this system up the coast, let's say from the Carolinas north, big differences in the overnight model runs between the GFS, which is much quicker, and the European model, which kind of holds back the moisture into maybe Tuesday, Wednesday time frame of next week. And that's a big impact in the timing of the potential heavy rainfall, Carolinas north to the mid-Atlantic coastline, the New England coastline. So there's still plenty of details to iron out. I want to start off with the 500 millibar pattern here. We've talked all week about the importance of an incoming upper level trough over the south central U.S., a key player here, especially once this system rides up the eastern seaboard. And here it is as we begin the day here on Friday morning, right in this region right here, a nice upper level trough situated over the south central part of the U.S. The hurricane itself showing up here north and west of Hispaniola. Now we'll walk through these 500 millibar maps to see what happens here with this particular upper level trough. We're just going through on an hourly basis here rather quickly here. And one of the points I made over the past few days is that this upper level trough, and here it is Friday evening, does not move quickly at all, tends to intensify over the south central states and does not move quickly at all, which is a key factor here, allowing for this hurricane to potentially ride right up along the eastern seaboard. This is now tomorrow morning, 24 hours from now, early Saturday. Look at this impressive upper level feature here, hardly moving from where it is positioned right now to tomorrow morning. And here is our hurricane closing in on the maybe the east coast, or more likely about 50 miles off the east coast of Florida. This kind of a trough situated over the south central U.S. and not sweeping to the coast itself or off the coast is going to allow for this system to ride up along the east coast here over the next several days. Again, probably in the early next week time frame for the Carolinas up to New England. Let's keep moving forward here and watch what the GFS model does. Again, notice the very slow movement of this upper level trough. Now we're all the way into Sunday morning here, still situated over the south central states and all the way up to the Great Lakes. And here is Hurricane Isaias, a combination of this upper level trough here and high pressure over the western Atlantic will certainly allow for the possibility for this to go perhaps into the Carolina coastal sections as a hurricane, and then maybe right along the Jersey coast and New England coast early part of next week. We'll go out a little farther here in time and see what the GFS models. Again, we're looking at the 500 millibar level here. Let's go all the way into Monday morning. And here we go. And again, the GFS is a little bit faster than some of the other models, but notice the general flow along the East Coast out of the south to southwest to the north and northeast, allowing for this hurricane to ride up to the Carolina coastline and then potentially right along the mid-Atlantic coastline, maybe the New England coastline during the early part of next week. Well, let's now do a similar progression here on an hourly basis from last night's 6E operational GFS for the surface forecast map. So first of all, let me point out one other thing here about the weather pattern here up across the mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S. there's potential for some heavy rain off and on today into tonight in the mid-Atlantic region associated with a stalled out frontal system. And we have had many, many days in the month of July, which ends today, with high temperatures in places like D.C. and Philadelphia at 90 plus degrees. In fact, in both of those cases, I believe at the official reporting airport, Reagan in National Airport in D.C., DCA, and Philadelphia International Airport, PHL. I think both of those sites actually had the most number of days in the month of July at 90 plus degrees, 90 or higher for high temperatures. Early on in this video discussion, I talked about how Mother Nature, low pressures tend to try to avoid obstacles and go to areas of least resistance. Well, it's amazing how many times you see a weather pattern seemingly know that a new month is about to begin, and it's total coincidence on that part. However, we get to the end of July here, and it looks like the temperature pattern that has produced all these 90 degree plus days in the mid-Atlantic region changes dramatically today. High temperatures may now reach 80 degrees in parts of the suburban areas, for example, along the I-95 corridor region. And the 80s look like they'll rule for the highs, places like D.C., Philadelphia, over the next several days as we begin the month of August. Well, here is the position in the GFS model as of early this morning. And again, low pressure kind of depicted over the mid-Atlantic region with some scattered rainfall and some heavy rainfall. Now let's move forward here in time, and we'll go quickly here again on an hourly basis and watch the movement of the GFS last night with this system, maybe 50 miles or so off the coast, the east coast of Florida. That still produces some heavy rainfall in Florida, places like Melbourne, for example, Cape Canaveral. The strongest, most damaging winds likely along the over the barrier islands along the east coast of Florida. And then we have to watch for the possibility that it remains a hurricane later in the week and early part of next week as it approaches the Carolina coastline. South Carolina, North Carolina may be dealing with Hurricane Isaias late in the weekend or early part of next week. And then, and again, it could increase in intensity from a Category 1 to a Category 2 or so. Then it's possible it rides up right along the Mid-Atlantic coastline and the New England coastline during the early part of next week, whether that's in the Monday time frame or perhaps Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. A little early to say, but the U.S. East Coast is certainly in the path, the potential path of Hurricane Isaias, and that's after pounds away at the Bahama Islands today, and then the southern and eastern parts of Florida this upcoming weekend. Stay tuned to PerspectiveWeather.com later today for an update. That's it for now. I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.